Welcome back to Ralph's Sort of True Stories. As you can tell and know from the last segment, we're doing Irish stories. One time I was bartending in New York City at a place called Murphy's, obviously an Irish bar, and this fella comes in right at 5 o'clock. The place wasn't very busy at the time. Most of the people were still just getting off work. And he comes in and he says, "Barkeep," he said, "give me 3 shots of Bushmills." And I says to him, I says, 3 shots, sir, it's not too busy. He says, "I can keep an eye, I can bring them to you one at a time." He says, "No," he says, "you don't understand." He said, "This would be for my brother in Sydney, and this would be my brother back home in Dublin, and this is for myself here in New York City. We have an arrangement that every day at 5 o'clock our local time, we have a drink together." And this went on for a couple of weeks. Every day at 5 o'clock he'd come in, 3 Bushmills. So one day he comes in and he says, "Barkeep, I only need 2 Bushmills today." And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry for your loss." He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, if you're only having 2, I figure either your brother in Sydney or your brother in Dublin must have gone to his great reward in heaven." "Oh, no, they're fine. They're fine. This one's for me brother in Sydney. This is for me brother in Dublin. For myself, I can't have one. You see, I'm on the wagon." And that's the way the Irish cut down on their drinking, I guess. Well, one time I found myself in a bar in Dublin. I walked in. It was only about 3:30 in the afternoon, but, I wanted to get a jump on my good Irish drinking for the day. And there was only 2 fellas in the bar. And they were sitting a few stools apart. And I ordered a drink, started having my drink, and I hear one of them say to the other, "How long have you been in Dublin?" He said, "Oh, I've been here 10 years. "Oh, really? I've been here 10 years as well. Barkeep, bring us a drink. We're going to celebrate the fact we've both been in Dublin for 10 years. So they sit there and have that drink, and then one says to the other, he says, "So, where are you from?" He said, "I'm from over on the west side. I'm from Kilcarney." "Ah, you're from Kilcarney?" He says, "I'm from Kilcarney too." He says, "Well, barkeep, bring us a drink. We're going to celebrate the fact that we're both from Kilcarney." I watch them, and they drink that drink, and then the first one says to the second one, he says, "So, where did you go to school in Kilcarney?" He said, "I went to St. Andrews." "Oh, you did? Well, I went to St. Andrews as well. Bartender, bring us another drink to celebrate the fact we both went to St. Andrews." So he gives them the drink, and I say to the bartender, I said, "Isn't it amazing these 2 guys just happen to meet in this bar and they have so much in common?" He says, "You don't pay any attention to them. It's just the Murphy twins getting drunk again." So with an Irishman, you don't need much of an excuse. Well, a little bit later that evening, I happened to be in that same bar, still there, I mind you, and so I was getting a little bit tipsy myself, when all of a sudden a priest walks in. Well, now, Irish priests have known to have a little tipple or 2 themselves, but he walks up to a table and he says to the lads there, he says, "Do you want to go to heaven?" And they say, "Oh, yes, of course, Father. We want to go to heaven." So he says, "Well, go stand right over there." So they did, and he went up to the next table. "Do you want to go to heaven?" "Oh, yes, Father." So will you go stand over there with those other fellas? And he come up to me and he says, "Do you want to go to heaven?" No, I was sitting at a table by myself, and I start stuttering. I said, he says, "Are you telling me you don't want to go to heaven?" I said, "Well, Father, I'm thinking." He says, "Now, when you die, you don't want to go to heaven?" "Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. I definitely want to go to heaven when I die. I thought maybe you were getting up a gang to go right now." Maybe if I hadn't been drinking so much, it would have been a little more clear to me, And just as I'm fixing to leave, a fellow walks in, and he looks like he's fuming a bit. Sits down, and he says to the bartender, he says, "Casey, give me 2 shots. No, make it 3 shots. A Jameson's whiskey, straight up neat." He says, "Oh, Sean, you having a bad day, are you?" He said, "I had another fight with the wife." He said, "Oh, well, how did that go?" He says, "I had her on her hands and knees crawling to me." He says, "Oh, and what did she say?" She said, "Come out from under that bed, you little coward." So those are a few more stories about Irish and involving bars and a bit of drinking. And I want to thank you for watching Ralph's Sort of True Stories. In the next segment, we're going to have a few more. Maybe there'll be one that doesn't involve alcohol. I don't know. You'll have to tune in to find out. You know, in the meantime, right down there at the bottom of the screen, I want you to hit that thumbs up button and then go over to the right and click subscribe and click that little bell. And that little bell will let you know when we've loaded a new segment for you. Again, thanks. Ralph's Sort of True Stories.